Well, crapola. Turns out I was not cheating in favor of the French. I was doing the correct thing when I was giving them every other turn two replacement. Well, no, I mean, by the rules, actually it's one in each, but I think the intention was to give two. Anyway, again, I'm not going to worry about it. The hell with it. I'm not going to give them the extra points. But it doesn't happen until June of 16. That's what I thought originally, and why I was kind of ignoring that and not looking it up and everything every turn. This is the time when you do have to start looking up, though, because I see this is September. and October the German replacement points go up and their supply points go up. But the point is, when you got to page through this book back and forth to find these things, it is kind of an irritation, especially when very little of the rest of the game. Yeah. So what things take me time in the game? It's the things I've mentioned, shifting stuff around, which it feels like bullshit to me. Looking up where my reinforcements are, finding the correct ones. So, it took me a couple minutes to find my 9-5 guard units that are a rare kind of unit. You could say, well, that's your sorting problem. You need more than 3 counter trays to handle the game. Well, 3 counter trays handles Europa Universalis. This game has significantly less counters, I think, total, and certainly less on the board, less need to grab them, But anyway, with all the different unit strengths, etc., it is an irritation, even when you're not looking for specific numbered units. Now, going beyond that, you're paging through, getting irritated by it, and then you got to keep looking up, hey, what supplies come this month? There's no easy to find player aid that should be included in the game to just kind of give you that stuff for the grand campaign. Now, maybe the person whom I know is the biggest proponent of this game, at least online, says he never plays the grand campaign. It's too, it gets too tedious. I can get that. I really can. As an operational game, playing Schlieffenplan felt okay. It really did. It felt pretty good. At this point, though, the big thing that's turning me off is the way this is organized and the way the counters are having to cope with the different counters. But largely, there's not a lot of swapping going on right now. So, it's okay. But now I'm coming up against, you didn't read that right. You didn't find, you got to page through. You got to flip-flop back and forth between these pages. You got to find this. It's just the presentation of these things is a pain in the butt. It really is. And there is no reason for it. There really, probably someone has a player aid somewhere printed up. If so, the best thing the game designer can do is point to that. Say, hey, you want this copy, not the one I printed in the rule book. And, this is not a matter where the silver edition improves. It doesn't. It's got the same kind of layout where everything's there, with the exception, perhaps, this little weirdness where there's a typo or something. That may not be corrected. I don't know. I didn't look it up. I know some of the things were not, some were. Many were. But a little bit of thinking about presenting that, I think, could come up with a much better format where you don't have to flip through, where these 10-minute turns where you're really not doing much play-wise anyway, you're really just shifting troops around. It's not that miserable an experience, except the things that really get in your way. Finding the correct counter, looking through here to find out, to try to remember what's going on, whatever. When you string it all together, a game that I think could probably be done in less than 50 hours for the whole war for this front. Because I think each month is about an hour. once you get down to it. The Schlieffen plan period is so fluid, you really do need to play heavily. But yeah, I don't think this is that ridiculously long a game. And actually, if it were all presented well, if it were all packaged up so you could do the grand campaign smoothly, it's not outside of the reach of what I'd be willing to do. But, but seeing how this is presented, you know, maybe if I didn't have a lot of games that I wanted to play, maybe I would put together the presentation that would work for me. And I bet you it would work better for a lot of people. Because it wouldn't be too hard. It would indicate the supply points in with the reinforcements, not just a paragraph, a line here and there to remind you of what you're getting, how many replacement points you're getting each month. What are special units that you have to worry about? Obviously the mountains are okay, but some of them like the colonials and stuff aren't distinguished correctly. This would take probably 20 hours to put together though, right? You know, and in a game that's already taking me 50 hours, plus whatever time I have to hunt down these aspects. I mean, it probably would be an equivalent, not too much heavier cost than just trying to play the game through and putting something together that would work very well. But that's something that I believe is part of what you pack, you know, the designer's effort or his playtesters or whomever he's relying on to kind of tighten things up. The developer, really, to come together and say, hey, this is what we need here. You know, we need to put something together so people can play this without the hassle. Now, of course, eventually, if enough people like it, somebody will do that work. And maybe they already have. I'm just not aware of it because no one has pointed me to that and said, hey, this is what you need, you know. And then, of course, well, I don't have a printer. So, you know, I would end up, well, do I want to spend a couple of hours going out to Kinko's or whatever to get a copy of this? And I don't know. I really don't know because I very much rely upon what the game package comes with. And I think I'm probably at the extreme on that, but I don't think I'm alone on it. I think there are a significant number of people who expect a game to come with more or less what you need for it. Well, the Germans open up the new month by commencing a bombardment of Paris again. They had some 42 strength points of artillery that cost 11 supply. Great. French have no artillery there, so they can't respond at all. Now, the 42 strength points is halved because of the terrain. So that drops it to 21, but with so many units here, it's a +4 to the table. They did 5 points of damage to the fortification. They do 5 demoralization points by attacking, and the French don't get to respond at all. You know, it's just a cost of supply for demoralization points. Yes, it's a high ratio, but they're not taking any demoralization from it. Of course, they're taking their 65 a turn, but they don't have an attack that they want to make. They might be able to afford one. They just don't want to do it if they could win more points on a defensive battle. Here's the problem. The problem is the advantage goes to the attacker. So if they could launch a significant offensive down here in the south, for example, they could cause more damage than they're getting, but the terrain favors the French, and it just seems like a safer thing to bomb Paris while it's there. There are other fortifications I could pick a point off of here and there, probably pretty easily, but this seemed like the most valuable option. One thing I got to keep in mind, the Belgians count as French demoralization points in all these later scenarios. So it might be worth going and picking on these Belgians at some point. I'm not sure how easy a job it is, but it's one of the few rules from the scenarios that seems to apply to this whole situation rather than the most of the others, the special rules are really situational things. I haven't seen many at all. For example, Falkenheim, not really being in favor of an all-out assault on Verdun, which ends up, getting overruled eventually. Anyway, that's what the Germans are doing. I don't think the French are going to launch an offensive yet. We'll see where their points end up. Well, September brought exciting things. To begin with, the French lost. I miscounted. And they ran their supply totals above the 150 they're allowed. It can never advance above that, so they would have lost. Well, the hell with that. I let them make assaults. They had to make two. They made a massive one here in conjunction with the Allies, with the Brits. This is the one they wanted to make against here. It did more damage than they took. Assaults are good. They really are, because you get to mass more firepower. You get 3 hexes. It's unlikely you're hitting a fully stacked hex. Yes, you've got a -2 against you, but in general, you tend to do damage when you assault, if you have the troops to do it. If you don't, you can't. This was kind of a surprise assault for the French. They were expecting to do this at the end of this month, not the beginning. But anyway, then they found we still don't have enough. We're still over by a few points. So they launched another assault here, and you can see they broke through. And now we have, sorry about that, our first instances of devastated hexes. These cost extra movement. The Germans have been pinched back. This did not work out well for the Germans at all. But, I think they were only being fair letting the French get an assault in. Since they couldn't see the chart, and the French could have been cheating this whole time and just not told them, right? Alright. Anyway, it doesn't seem a reasonable thing to throw the whole game away just because of a mistake like that. But yeah, we're going to see something interesting start to happen. The German line is crumbling. The French can make mobile attacks to try to strike in here and then try to wind their way around these one or both of the fronts and try to really get a significant breakthrough. Right now they've got 1 hex. That's all they've got, but they can probably take advantage of that. And we've seen before where it's much, much easier. They got a massive 6 on their die roll. With the -2, it ended up doing 21 points of damage. That was exactly the number of strength points the Germans had in this location. So it only did 14 points. The Germans came back and did, 8 to the French. But this is looking kind of interesting. It looks like an offensive's actually going to work here. Kind of early for that to happen, huh? All right, we'll see. Probably mainly, the Germans have a lot more strength down here and not as much where the French were actually set up to make the attack more easily. They could have made it in either place fairly easily. But the French were able to get almost maximum strength on here. I don't know what it was, 120 strength points or something like that for 3 hexes. They were a couple of points behind, less artillery than they could possibly have. And at least a couple of units weren't full 6-pointers or something. At least one, I don't know. But pretty impressive, actually. We'll see how that develops. Well, after that initial kind of impressive breakthrough here, the French launched a series of attacks. The Germans had placed a real barrier in the way. There was no way I was just going to punch that out of the way with a stack, even if it was a full-strength stack of, 36 plus, say, 9, 45. The most that could do is 11. There's more than 22 strength points for the Germans here, so I'm not going to get a breakthrough. Yeah, maybe I could get an advantage there, but triple Germans are going to do a lot of damage back. I don't think that I can even win the attrition fight there. So what I decide is, well, the Germans had to strip things off. So I slammed a bunch of units up here, pushed some here with the artillery, tried to punch through here, failed, then did a combined attack here, shifted down to this side of the front, slammed them here, and then moved the British and the French artillery into place to slam this hex. This one got strengthened because that was where the assault had been, just sliding across the front. Nothing worked, and really heavy losses for the Allied forces here. The bright moment of the breakthrough has turned into something of a nightmare here, where the Allies are, because they saw a possible success, and if they could break through and kind of, maybe make some kind of pocket here, wow, that would be humongous, right? Well, that doesn't appear to be happening. And in fact, French supplies are a problem now. Remember, they were up near 150. Now they're at 40, 60, maybe a little under 100. I've got to shift some of them around. Supposedly that's supposed to happen before you make your attacks, but I like to do it afterwards, because otherwise I have to calculate all the points for the attack first and then calculate them again. And that's just, that's the kind of shortcuts that I like to take in a game, and in this particular case it works well with this, as really do a lot of other factors just to make it a little easier. If you play things exactly by the rules and very strictly and procedurally, like you have to with some games, this game, refreshingly compared to some of the things that I've seen recently, you can kind of twist and turn things a little bit, and it's no big deal. So if you have an advantage in terms of efficiency to playing something, I'm thinking here particularly something like Weltkrieg, where, damn, you have to, if you don't follow it precisely, you can't do anything to make life easier. If you try to, you're probably going to violate the game in some significant way, and I was doing that consistently when I was playing it, because my natural tendency is to try to make life a little easier on myself. Anyway, with this, it's very easy to do with these kind of things. You can just, move the supplies around afterwards when you're not supposed to. I don't know if the assault can continue, though. Maybe a limited assault up here, maybe a limited assault in one of these sectors. If the Germans have to loosen something up and weaken something, we might see one. But there's a lot of German troops. This was a fluke. The Germans left a part of the line kind of weak, and the French got one hell of a die roll there, and just precisely matched the full strength of the Germans, therefore getting the breakthrough. Now that their attention is drawn there, well, now there's a big boot plug in the way. Again, a quick opportunistic switch in the axis of the attacks. First, the English switched all the way up to here in the north and made an assault up here. This is actually, so this is the only way you kind of get these. I think the way that you get an advantage in this, but it seems completely ahistorical to me, is as the enemy starts throwing their defensive forces into the weak spots that you've already accumulated your force against, other weak spots develop, and you can shift your army fairly quickly. There's no chance, for example, of the English and French hitting any of these in here. They're just so potent. But the English saw an opportunity where this hex was now a little weaker, and maybe they couldn't break through, but they at least had a chance of bleeding. It didn't go well. They got bad rolls. And also, the French switched their attack to this side of Paris, just swapped around. Remember, they had made assaults, I don't remember where, everywhere, all over the place. I think here and here. Now they've switched over to here. It's like this dancing attacks all over the place. Now, that may be true of certain points of the war, but not this era. And that kind of disturbs me a little bit, that these tactics that took a while to kind of develop, the broad front attacks, for example, or whatever, you can't do the broad front attacks, but you can open up new assaults all over the place and just keep, halting your old ones. It may seem reasonable, but it didn't happen. The army, once moving in a certain location, pretty much kept moving there. Anyway, the French are really kind of stretching their supplies. They're getting cut way down. The assault here didn't work. It came damn close. There was just an Imperial Guard under there. It looked like there were more counters there. The artillery was there to bolster the defense. They came within 1 point of taking the Guard out with a not terribly good roll. The Germans have to cover that space, but assuming that they do, the French are not really They're not likely to attack. They're out of supplies. And given that they're not likely to attack, the English are probably not going to attack either. Build up their own capacity a little further. And the assaults are definitely petering out. The French found places where they kind of would have liked to have attacked, but not where they've attacked before, and not here where the breach is. Over here, they don't have quite the strength. They may end up launching another assault if that stays open. The English continued their assaults here, but those are also petering out. Big German reinforcements came in near Paris, preventing, they railed up there, preventing the French from being able to get a breakthrough there. And actually, if you think about it, the defensive bonus that the Germans have too, because of their rail capacity, they can just rail up to a location and throw the troops in a way that the French really can't. The French have to have the troops in that salient to defend. The Germans aren't launching any attacks right now. They may in the future. I would hope they have desires to do so within the game. But at this point, they really haven't. But that really told against the French, not being able to throw more stuff in the line that just came in. Anyway, we'll see what the rest of the month brings. I forgot to move this unit. Well, the rest of September passed without incident, and we can see the line is pretty much the same as it has been. I just like following it. We got this one little bump right here. That's the one little difference. Now there's devastated hexes here. The French will dig in here, the Germans will dig in here, and pretty soon it's going to be almost undistinguishable that there was even a battle there. And then curving up along here, we're all the same. Just repositioning troops, fiddling around, changing values, stacking, unstacking, playing with all the pieces. All fast, very easy. Not a lot of effort there. Now I got to spend, the 20 minutes setting up. Or, it's not going to be that long because I'm not looking for individual uses. It depends on what ends up coming up. But 10 minutes or so setting up the next month. It's not really a big expense once especially if you start setting the hell with it, and I'm not going to be that careful. Anyway, up this goes.